you can't help but think there's one person hijacking this entire free agency period for a lot of teams. And it's not just on this person, because I do put a lot of blame on the owners as well for not spending money. Scott Boras is a guy that has a line drawn in the sand. He's kind of like Preller. He's like, I'm not budging. Like I am waiting here until I get my clients what I want. Same thing with Preller in the offseason. He's the type of guy making moves or trying to sign players. He's not going to budge. He is going to have something in his head and in his mind on what he wants, and he's not going to move off of that line. Same thing with Scott Boras here, and it's kind of made this offseason for all of baseball, besides if you're the Dodgers, meh.
Anticlimactic is what it has been. I mean, I don't really know if the waiting game benefits the agent or not. I mean, inevitably players need homes and teams need players. So there is that inevitability. And someone like Blake Snell's coming off of Cy Young. I mean, he's gonna find a home, but is he gonna find it at his terms? Because the last we heard on someone like Snell, that's the top of the market, right? We don't think the Padres are in on the top of the market. The Snells, the Bellingers in the outfield. But we heard Snell had an offer from the New York Yankees like a month ago. 5 years, $150 million. We then heard weeks later, Scott Boras is asking for 9 years, $270. Like, you talk about a gap between what has been offered by one of the big spenders in the sport, the Yankees, and what Scott Boras is looking for. And maybe because of that, to your point, that gap is so wide that it's not going to be solved in a short period of time. So, I mean, that's kind of crazy to think. A guy coming off of Cy Young, who's in his prime, who's got 2, could wait this off until when? I mean, middle of camp, later in camp. Remember, Blake Snell's the guy that when he gets a slower start, he got off to a slow start with the Padres a couple of years ago. But here's the thing. I'm with you on Boras, and we'll talk to Chelsea about it. But it's not like Boras controls all these players. I'd have to look. But, like, what about the mid-tier guys? What about the Tommy Phams? What about the low-tier guys? What about the Jerks and Profars? I mean, what does Blake Snell have to do with Tommy Pham? I guess maybe Cody Bellinger has something to do with it. But what does Cody Bellinger have to do with Jerks and Profar? You know, it's
good question. I don't know.
If you own a mansion, what does that have to do with, like, my one-bedroom place?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Nothing, right?
Nothing. No, I agree. The question is, do these teams and these owners want to spend money to try to improve their teams, or they've seen what has happened in the past with big money spenders like the Mets and the Padres recently, and those two teams fizzling out and crashing and burning in epic fashion. So they're not wanting to go out and spending a bunch of money because they've seen what it does and what happens when a team spends a bunch of money, other than the Dodgers or maybe the Yankees, but still the Yankees did make the postseason last year as well. We'll see. I don't know. You're, what is it? What are we, 7th? 4 days away from Padres pitchers and catchers reporting. This time next week will be, I believe, the first
club workout.
Yeah, full club workout. Yep. Either the 16th, whenever that is, maybe end of next week. And there's still a bunch of names on the board, and there's still a bunch of holes on this team, and the roster is not even incomplete. And so, you know, baseball is just chugging along and being that sport that really isn't talked about.
Yeah, it would be easier to be critical, actually, of the Padres if they were the outlier. Like, if this was a Padres thing, if this was an Eric Katsenda
baseball thing.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, there is slight movement. There's something like Gary Sanchez, which is, to be honest, in the low, mid, high. I put him in the low. Yeah. Like, okay, it's a minor deal. He goes to the Brewers. There have been back-end rotation pieces that have signed. To your point, the Dodgers have played a different sport here this offseason.
No question.
They've spent the $1.2 billion, and the Yankees, to their credit, acquired Juan Soto. And there are other teams that have made sizable moves. But there's the other 25 teams, too, that are just waiting around, making very minor move after very minor move. And the Padres are in that category. And we can try to explain it away. Is it because they have to lower payroll? Is it because they want to go with the youth movement, as we've talked about extensively? Or is it because of the market conditions? Because the last we heard from Preller, hey, we'll see if we can get some buys in January. Nobody's got any buys in January because nobody's been bought in January.
Nope.
So are the buys coming in February or potentially March? And again, not just a Padres issue. To your point, it's kind of like a baseball issue right now.
For sure. I put this on baseball and the owners in baseball, because a lot of owners are scared to spend money. A lot of these owners they care more about their pockets than improving the team on the field that they're the owners of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the Padres are in that camp. I don't know what Eric Costenda's thought process is. We've yet to hear from him. Don't even really know what he fully looks like. Don't even know what he sounds like. But as of this moment in time, it's really hard to convince me anything other than they're trying to save as much money as possible, and they're not really focused on. I'm not saying that they're not focused on the on-field product, but they're not as focused as they were in the past. They're not as focused as going out and signing players to help the big league club now. When, hey, we have some minor league dudes over here that will cost you nothing and maybe can play. Let's go that route instead of spending money on potentially a stopgap, even though I feel like a stopgap at these positions is what they need to do. But who knows if they're going to do it? Yeah,
it's interesting because there aren't like a ton of examples of teams that sell out every game and then are trying to do things, quote unquote, on the cheap. I'm not saying that's where the Padres are. They have a real payroll. It'll be a top 15 payroll, not a bottom 15. It probably won't be a top 5, but it'll be in that 10 to 15 range. In addition to that, though, they're coming off a year in which they drew 3.2 million fans, which is utterly insane considering the on-field results. Credit to Padres fans. Incredible.
Amazing.
And the marketing of the club. They did an amazing job with the club despite the results. But then we hear from the Padres as recently as this week. I think Eric Rupner said this, and I think I saw it on social media or on Twitter from the Padres directly, that they have sold a club record in terms of season ticket sales, going beyond last year when they ultimately draw 3.2 million. So I don't know if they'll draw 3.2 because there's single games in there. But my point is they're trending for this great box office year again. 2.9, 3, 3.1, 3.2.
Great giveaways.
But they're not finishing off their roster. But they're in the top 10% of draws in baseball. Like they're going to draw like the LA Dodgers, the New York Yankees in that category. But those teams
top 5
have acquired Juan Soto and Yamamoto and Ohtani, and the Padres like, oh, they're out on Gary Sanchez. Oh, they're out on Lorenzen. I don't even know if they are, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's just weird. They're going to draw 3.2 million fans and the roster's not complete and the season's just a couple of days away from starting.
Well, I'm okay with the loss of Gary Sanchez.
Of course, that's not my point, but no,
I know other pieces. I know what you're saying, because now it's Luis Campusano's the guy. We kind of knew
as
that,
he should be,
and as he should be. You're right. But yeah, it's just a weird time. Padres are kind of in this like holding pattern as far as making any moves, because maybe it's because of the passing of Peter Seidler. Maybe this was the plan all along. I know Kevin has reiterated that even if Peter Seidler were still with us, this was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hard to think that, honestly, because
that this was the plan.
Yeah. I
right.
Hard to really think and truly believe, like if Peter Seidler were still here with us, that the plan would be to do nothing. And I know they've done things, but when I say nothing, I mean like actually improve their roster from last year, which they have not done.
Mm-hmm.
And is it because they're so capped with money? Is it because they just don't want to go that route again because it failed miserably last year? Is it because they trust their farm system more than other people might? Is it because they want to like actually reset the CBT and maybe go for it next offseason? Or I don't know what it is, but whatever's going on and whatever that thought process is down at Petco Park, it's not to improve the Major League roster this year from getting other Major League talent in here.
So far, from what we know so far. It would be easy to make that statement, and something we'll never know. I mean, maybe AJ Preller will be asked of it. Maybe Eric Contenda will be asked of it. Yeah, would this plan differ if Peter Seidler was still the primary owner of the Padres, or was this the plan all along, regardless of who was owning the Padres in 2024?